Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to today's discussion with the Nature Conservancy, where we will hear about their collaboration between the U.S. and China to tackle climate change. And we'll also hear a little bit about the experiences of our speakers at both the COP27 climate conference, as well as the COP15 biodiversity meeting, which was recently concluded in Montreal. I'm Nor Kokiar, the Executive Director of the Washington State China Relations Council. Before we start with the real meat of the discussion, let me briefly introduce you to the Washington State China Relations Council. Our organization was founded in 1979, and we are the oldest state-level organization of its kind. Our mission is to improve the bilateral relationship between Washington State and China, specifically in the areas of business, government, culture, and education. Prior to the pandemic, our organization was very active in receiving delegations from China, as well as leading trips to China. Since the onset of the pandemic, we have focused much of our efforts on producing China-related webinars like today's events. If you would like to learn more about our events or how to participate or become more involved, please visit our website at www.wscrc.com. As both of our speakers today are from the Nature Conservancy, I'll let them provide some background about their organization before we take up the climate change discussion. So let me now introduce the speakers and moderator. Our first speaker is Ms. Dong Ke, who leads the conservation efforts beyond China's borders at TNC. She provides technical support to TNC teams in China, the Asia-Pacific region, and also in the World Office in developing and implementing China international cooperation conservation strategies, including China responsible commodities footprint and China-U.S. collaboration on nature-based solutions for climate. She has extensive working experience on forest resource management, governments, and climate. Before joining TNC, Ko worked for China's State Forestry Administration, then the World Wide Fund for Nature, or WWF, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature in Beijing. She has a PhD in silviculture from Beijing Forestry University and an MBA from Eastern Oregon University. This background has provided her a broad cross-cultural interdisciplinary knowledge and network related to sustainable development in both China and around the world. Our second speaker is Ge Le, who's the Climate Change and Energy Director at the Nature Conservancy. Ms. Ge is in charge of the nature climate solutions, nature-based solutions, and climate change adaptation and rural energy siting projects for TNC China. Her nature-based solutions team is committed to unlocking the power of nature and promoting nature-based solutions so that China become a mainstream measures to tackle climate change. Her past experience includes serving as the assistant researcher at the geography department at Trent University and a senior researcher at the Qianlu Foundation. Liu holds a master's degree in ecology and a PhD degree in environmental and life sciences. And today's moderator is Dr. Man Wang, who's the director of the Washington State China Relations Council. And prior to joining the council, Man founded People and Places, a consultancy providing research services on regional and community development, demographics, and business and cultural exchange opportunities between China and the U.S. Her experience also includes serving as a business development manager at China at the Washington State Department of Commerce, the editor of the Seattle Luxury Living magazine, and a lecturer in the Masters of Geographic Information System, normally known as GIS, at the University of Washington. Man holds an MA in International Studies from East Carolina University, an MA in Geography from the State University of New York at Albany, and a PhD in Geography from the University of Washington. So before we get started, just a few short housekeeping notes. We'd appreciate if you keep yourself on mute throughout the event. And we will allow, of course, time for questions in the program. We will today have to finish exactly at 5 o'clock, so get your questions lined up early so we can address them. Please, if you have questions, put them in the chat box and we'll do our best to get to them. And now, without further ado, Man, I'll turn it over to you, and please, let's get started.
All right, Nor, thank you for the introduction. And Ke and Le, it's great to have you here. So since we're going to make a sharp stop at 5, I'll just let me dive directly into the questions. So I believe most people have heard of or know about TNC, but just to give us a better understanding of your organization and your work, why don't you introduce to TNC with some explanation of its history and mission? I guess I'll give this question to Ke.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Noor, for your kind introduction, and thanks, Man, and the WSCRC for giving TNC this great opportunity to share our work and learn from all of you, and hopefully we can identify some common areas for potential collaboration. And TNC, the Nature Conservancy, was founded in 1951 in the US as a non-profit, non-partisan, and non-confrontational organization. And it's a global organization right now. And we have about nearly 5,000 staff globally. And we really rely on about 600 scientists. You know, TNC is a very much science-based organization. So besides the 50 states, TNC running our business in the US, we also pursue our conservation work in about 76 countries, including China. And so our mission is to conserve the lands and the waters on which all the life depends on. So people are also important. So over the past 70 years, TNC has protected 50 million hectares of land, improving management of 40 million hectares of ocean, and improving water security for more than 1 million of people. And in 2021, TNC globally put lots of efforts to put in place these 2030 goals. So right now, all our work is about towards these 2030 goals. So today we will discuss about climate. So besides other ecosystems, so the two main goals that we are working on related to climate one is avoid or sequester 3 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emission annually. Second is to help 100 million people at severe risk of climate-related emergencies through protecting and restoring health of nature habitats. For example, to restore and protect the mangrove and reefs and forest, and also protect the communities from storm surge and severe weather and wildfires. Our strength, so TNC rely on 3 things. As I mentioned, science is the key, is our backbone. So that's the foundation for TNC, how TNC operates around the world. We research, learn, and develop breakthrough tools and ideas. And then we share, and also, learning from all of you too. Second is the innovative finance. We really need money to sort of navigate the fund to invest in nature and the climate. So we forge new financial solutions to get conservation results. I will kind of elaborate a little bit more later. So the third is to advance or influence decision makings. Just now, Noor mentioned about the kind of WSCRC's scope of work. It's pretty similar. We also would like to influence, collaborate with the government, businesses, and the communities to scale up our conservation solutions. So that's sort of the general, this nutshell of the introduction of TNC. I would like to answer any questions if you have.
Okay. Thank you, Ke. Very impressive numbers, and then thanks for the great work that TNC has done. So if I remember correctly, so TNC has been in China for over 20 years. And then, so Le, you're based in Beijing and then are heavily involved in TNC's work in China. So can you briefly introduce the TNC work in China?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first, thank you for the invitation. It's really my great honor to be here, share the story of TNC in China. As Ma has mentioned, yes, TNC has entered China for more than, 20 years. Basically, it's almost 25 years. So it starts in the year 1998. So the Yunnan provincial government invited the TNC to, help the province protect their spectacular biological and cultural diversity. So start from there, TNC introduced the U.S. national park systems to China and piloted the first national parks in Pudacuo, Shangri-La in the year 2007. So I think the first decade for TNC is kind of a doer. We introduced the proven census, the conservation models, and, we do lots of demonstrations in China. So, kind of doing lots of this demonstration works. And marked by the year, 2009, the founding of the TNC China board. So TNC's role can, starts from a doer, transformed to we call it an enabler. We're trying to scale up our conservation works by expanding our partnerships. So the China steps that we work together with the professionals, the peers, the entrepreneurs, we offering the knowledge, our experience, and also we do lots of trainings, and we introduce our, science tools and our, kind of the accumulations in the first 10 years to the global, the national level. And I think some important milestones happened in the year 2011 is the first private reserve was founded in Laohegou, Sichuan. So that was the first private reserves in China. And also at the same year, the China team set the China Global Conservation Fund. So that fund was, used the China resources to support the global conservation work. So we think that is a very important progress or outcomes for the China team. And into the third decade, for TNC China, we followed the TNC global strategy, and we keep unlocking the power of nature to tackling the climate change and the biodiversity loss, synergistically. We're doing one solution to, tackle these two problems. So I think after this almost, 25 years development, so far in China, TNC has 10 offices across the whole China, and with more than 16 members. Our working areas including the forest, the fresh water, the ocean, and also wetland. So yeah, I really welcome people from the WSCRC and our co-colleagues and also the folks attending this meeting. You have the chance to visit China and also visit our demonstration areas. Yeah, back to you, Man.
Thank you, Le. Yeah, we'll definitely go to visit those sites if there are opportunities in the future. So I guess I'll go back to Kun again. So would you share with us some of the areas or projects of collaboration in climate change between U.S. and China that the TNC has initiated?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Man. Yeah, actually, the collaboration between China and the U.S. started when TNC set up China office. As Le just mentioned, that sort of TNC introduced the national parks concept to China 20 years ago. And it's quite exciting. I think some of you may have already known that President Xi Jinping announced the first batch of the 5 national parks during the first phase of COP15. And they are Northeast China Tiger and Leopard National Park, Three River Source National Park, Giant Panda National Park, Wuyixian National Park, and Hainan Tropical Rainforest. So this is something that TNC basically was, I'm very proud of, was a pioneer to sort of introduce the national parks idea. So the first national park globally in the world, that was the Yellowstone, was kind of something I'm really proud of. And also, so TNC kind of contributed to this Mississippi Yangtze River Eco Partnership. So this partnership really led to China's 10-year ban on commercial fishing in Yangtze River and allows stocks to revive. And our Chinese partners shared their expertise, science, and also kind of with our counterpart in the US, like Illinois chapter, to try to support efforts to reduce the Asian carp population. And, again, I have to say, most of our colleagues are still based in the US, even though sort of we are expanding our global presence. So we, over the past 70 years, we, kind of in all these 50 states, we have these conservation sites, conservation experience. So TNC has been very active in supporting hosting the Chinese delegations to come to the U.S. to really learn, exchange, and understand the conservation approaches. For example, TNC's Iowa chapter and partners hosted the delegation from National Development and Reform Commission, which led to Chinese decision to take this 9-point source pollution, this policy. And also, even for me, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I hosted several Chinese delegations from State Forestry Administration and even from this Beijing Municipality Bureau of Forestry and Parks. So to try to understand the forest management and even how to balance this land use planning. And so in terms of this collaboration with the Washington State, so we also learned that TNC is implementing the habitat gardens in Shanghai, which is an original idea from Seattle's urban storm water management gardens. And we right now adapted this idea and it's kind of apply this approach in Shanghai and in several other cities. And currently, as you all know, the China-U.S. collaboration, bilateral relationship is quite dynamic, up and down. So instead of working at this kind of national federal level, our current climate collaboration, especially on the nature-based solution, we are focusing on California and China. So I will sort of dive a little bit deeper on this California-China NBS collaboration later. Yeah, so this is sort of the general summary about our history about China, TNC's contribution to U.S.-China collaboration.
Thank you, Ke. Actually, it's great to hear there has been something, work has been done or will be done between TNC China and then Seattle, Washington. And also, I totally agree with you. So with the current relationship between Beijing and Washington, D.C., so collaboration at the subnational level is definitely very critical. So I'll move on to the next question. So both of you went to COP27 in Egypt, and Ke also attended the COP15 in Montreal shortly after COP27. So can you share with us some of your insights and the main takeaways from both conferences that are related to interactions and communications between U.S. and China on climate talks? I guess, Ke, you can go first if you don't mind.
I would ask Le to go first on 27.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's because 27 happens first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so thank you. I think first, I really want to say, I have this chance to attend this COP27 is really an amazing experience for me. It's also my first COP trip. I learned a lot, and the most thing that impressed me most is once I went there, you can see so many people from the government, or the local communities, and the the universities, and all the everywhere. I have to say, you can hear their voice. I think that is a very, very important and good platform, for you to know what is really happening for climate change. So yeah, I'm just so excited, even though now I mentioned this COP27. Yeah, so what is kind of the takeaways? I really have to say, one, for that 2 weeks, the thing I learned most is no matter from the government talks or from the Fed events hosted by non-government organization or even some some entrepreneurs, what I see is they all want to do is from this negotiation to implementation, they all call for more actions to tackle climate change, not just stopped at or just focus on negotiation. So that was the thing, call for action, call for implementation plan. I just impressed me most. From TNC side, I think for TNC, globally, we hosted, sponsored, or, spoke at more than 80 the on-site events. And also we co-hosting the, Nature for Climate, the Nature Pavilion. So the topics, including the climate change, the nature-based solution, and also the, fresh water, also about the carbon markets, and also, the events about the blue bonds. So I think that was, so many areas TNC was trying to engage at this COP27. And also, if you check the Sharm Shark implementation plan after the COP27, you can see there's so many, you can call it outcomes or output after this COP27. I'll just mention something that was, quite related to TNC. I think the first thing is about nature. In this COP, as for the first time in history, they just overarching the as the cover decision, they included the mention of nature as the very, very high level. And they also mentioned about the food, the river, the nature-based solution, and also the right to a healthy environment. And also, for each system, like the forest, the ocean, the agriculture, each of this system also received their own intersection in the cover text. So that is never happened at the before, the COPs. So, the importance of nature really gave TNC a very good sign, how we could highlight and focus and, develop our work later. And also for, I won't want to mention each system, for the sector, what they mentioned about the forest, the ocean, the agriculture. But yeah, if you are, quite interested in each of this part, you could see, they really give lots of good, I think it's some suggestions, on how people could do in each of this sector. The other thing I really want to mention is about the finance part, because I think, like Ke has mentioned, how to financing this NCS, how to financing the nature-based solution to tackling climate change is one of the important work for TNC. So for finance part during this COP, they updated the commitment of, mobilizing more than $100 billion per year to developing countries from the, the public and the private sectors that is set for the year 2024. So they have the exactly year and the exactly money. And also, the countries have to, agree on a shared definition of what is climate finance, and also, the number for this renewed goal. So I think that is quite over very clear, plan for what we will do after this negotiation of this COP27. And also, we know the innovating finance tools are also very necessary, if we want to achieve this goal. So I think that also gives, how do you say, the government and also the industries a very good stand, how their, contribution for this climate areas. And also for developing countries, they also advocated for the equitable distribution between the adaptation and mitigation. That was kind of to, people are always trying to find the synergetically ways how we could solve this adaptation work and mitigation work together. So I think that was also very important then. The other thing, also, what, I think we could take away is about the carbon market. And also, Ke also had mentioned, the carbon market is an important financial tools for us to, promote the climate change work, especially on the nature-based solution. So we have this, carbon market related project focused on ecosystem carbon sinks. And during this COP27, it's delivered a very significant guidance to help operationalize and scale up the international cooperations on the market and non-market approaches. And also they give the further guidance on the reporting and the tracking, because we all know, the reporting and the tracking problems for the carbon market is very important. I think this gives a very good guideline. So for China, we all know the local carbon market, what we call it a CCER carbon market in China, even though it's locked during the year 2017, but it's expected to reopen this year. So I think, the guidance during this COP27 for carbon market will also give China a very good chance, how we could develop our own local carbon market after this COP27. Also, one last thing I want to mention about climate adaptation area. So we all know, I think lots of news, mentioned the most important and maybe the only outcome for COP27 is they set the loss and damage finance, even though that seems to be a joke, but that's true. I mean, during this COP27, it's a very big progress. Is, the committee decided to set this loss and damage finance. This is also the first time, the negotiators discussed the loss and damage finance as an agenda item. And also, it's also called the final outcome for COP27. We all know this COP27 delayed for 2 days, and it's just trying to, get some common consensus. So I think this loss and damage finance would also, give the community a very good sense of how, climate adaptation is also as important as climate mitigation. And also this, the financial facility for this loss and damage was created, and is also open to countries, that was particularly vulnerable to the climate change, like the coastal line countries and, some small countries, small airline countries especially. So, and also, how much the developed countries will pay and what's the particular vulnerable countries that they will be illegal. So, there's still lots of questions listed there related to this, loss and damage finance, but they have been bring out and they have a kind of a roadmap, how we could solve this problem. And they also give us an announcement, some problems related to this loss and damage finance will also be negotiated in the year 2027, in the next COP. So that was also, the good sense. Because for most of the climate questions, people focus on mitigation. But I think from this COP, it starts to bring the climate adaptation in a very important, treat them as a very important thing. So, yeah, there's so many takeaways. This was just something related to TNC. So, yeah, I'll back to you, Man.
Thank you, Liz. So I do have a follow-up question about COP27, but I'll let Ke to talk about COP15, I assume, first, and then so maybe like the two of you can answer the question that I have. So Ke, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to echo what Le just mentioned. We definitely felt the energy. So we both were very inspired by this. This is so much energy from the government, from NGOs, from the business. You just imagine nearly 50,000 people in Sharm el-Sheikh in that 2 weeks, and also have this very high-level government officials and leaders like Joe Biden was there, and I even saw Nancy Pelosi. She's much shorter than I thought. She didn't wear that high heels that day, perhaps. And also there was the Brazil pavilion one day was very, very crowded, and their new president, Luna, right? So just went there. Yeah, so just to sort of see this energy, and we both feel very inspired. And in terms of this loss and damage fund, China's position is a little bit tricky. So right now, it's hard. We also kind of wait and see how China will define ourselves as a developed country or developing country to contribute to this part or to be the recipient of this loss and damage fund. We would like to learn. We keep our eyes open as well. And after this COP27, I went to Montreal and also met, just again, re-energized and reconnected with many colleagues and people in Montreal. And again, funding for nature is another big discussion. And China is the presidency country. I'm also very proud. So, but I think it was a very successful event after all. It was not easy, but I think the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework basically final done, and it includes about 23 targets. And I want to highlight a few, just related to finance, related to TNC's interest. So the first is the finance target 18 and target 19. So I perhaps could share with you a report produced by TNC, Cornell University, and the Posey Institute. So basically, in the next decade, we have $700 billion per year as the gap to invest in nature. And then this target 18, which is to reduce harmful subsidies by 500 billion a year by 2030. So that's 500. And then the target 18, which is sort of increasing the total spending on biodiversity from all sources to 200 billion per year by 2030. So if you kind of add this 500 billion plus this 200 billion extra investment in nature, so it's sort of more or less fill in this 700 billion gap. But it's not just about government. We all can take a role, right? In the NGO philanthropy work and also business and even individuals. We all really need to think about how to mobilize the new funding. And also one thing I also want to highlight here is, TNC cares about the 30 by 30. So basically that's target 3. By 2030, so effectively reserve and manage at least 30% of the world's lands, inland water, coastal areas, and ocean. So this one is included in this biodiversity framework, which is basically a milestone. And the nature-based solutions also included, that's target 8. We are very happy about it. So one thing, target 16, which related to all of us. So by 2030, reduce 50% of global food waste and significantly reduce overconsumption. So I really want to take this opportunity. If you have one takeaway from this workshop, from this webinar, just keep this in mind by 2030. Maybe from now on, we can all think about reduce the waste and significantly kind of reduce the overconsumption. Just after living in the U.S. for nearly 10 years, I just feel we can do a lot, just to save the resources from just reduce the waste. Yeah, so this is all this climate and biodiversity. Basically, these two crises are intertwined. So we try to connect these two things together and address these two crises at the same time by applying nature-based solutions. Back to you, Man.
Thank you, Ke. Thanks for giving us more details about COP15. I think people are more familiar with COP27, right? So thanks for providing more substantial information here. And also thank you for bringing up the loss and damage fund. So that's actually one of my questions. So for explaining it, and actually it's true, we all keeping our eyes on it to see what's going to happen. I remember I read it somewhere. Xie Zhenhua made a comment and saying, by definition, by World Bank's definition, China is a developing country, right? So we're not obligated to contribute cash to loss and damage fund, but we may help those countries in some other ways, maybe not cash-based, but some other ways. In terms of loss and damage caused by climate change. So we'll see what's going to happen. Another follow-up question for both of you is that one of the biggest news at COP27 was, U.S. and China resumed climate talks. So so the meeting between Xie Zhenhua and John Kerry. So did the meeting draw a lot of attention at COP27? It's at least it's a big news for people who are interested in U.S. relationships. So I'm just, just curious, how people react at COP27.
I don't know if Le, you would like to go, or based on my observation, I think Le could add more insights. We saw Minister Xie, we saw John Kerry separately for different events. I didn't see two of them kind of sitting together and chat in this public area. Perhaps, at least I was not aware of the public sort of connection and events. I just didn't know. But I heard that two of them had some informal dialogues and chat, I believe, in Sharm el Sheikh. But I don't know. I didn't really see so these two influential leaders had any sort of very committed events publicly. I don't know. So what's your insights? Have you observed anything from there?
It was a
Yeah,
private meeting.
Casual,
Yeah, I think it's a private meeting, and you know, for actually for TNC, we are the observers to attend the COP. You know, so you know, different people hold different cards to get entrance to the conference. So we are the observers. So for some of the any high level like negotiations, we're not allowed to get in. Yeah, but I think I have seen some public news in China, and also on the Google News or things like that. It seems they have some very good talk, and they also very good feelings to cooperate on climate change. So I think that's very good stand for these two countries, and also for TNC. Yeah.
And at the same time, there was this G20, right? President Xi Jinping and President Biden, they met in Bali. And I think they had 3 hours chat, and they also mentioned about the climate collaboration. And I think that was the signal that this collaboration talk resumed. Is that right? So at least based on this public available information.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so thank you, and then we'll move on. So this is a question like most people are interested in now. So what are the opportunities and challenges for those for the U.S. and China to collaborate on climate change? So there's been wide consensus in policy circles that the U.S. and China can meaningfully collaborate on climate change. But what does collaboration mean in practical terms? For example, does it imply joint research, setting new industry standards around climate technology, joint investment, etc.? So can you help us understand this based on your experience and TNC's work?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So for TNC, climate collaboration is a big topic. And as you see that TNC's work is quite focused on this nature-based climate solutions. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, so the national level political situation, up and down, and it's really beyond our control. And again, TNC is not, we are science-based and a non-confrontational organization. So we really have to sort of think about the science work and also this the groundwork, the practices. So, that's one thing. So the second part is that at this subnational level, actually this collaboration has been ongoing for many years. So right now, TNC is working closely with the California state. And there is a little bit of history. California previous governor, former governor Jerry Brown, and so when he was in the administration, he signed, if I remember correctly, about 21 MOUs on climate with Chinese provincial governments and the different ministries. And after he retired, he became the chair of the California China Climate Institute, CCCI. So CCCI is hosted by UC Berkeley. So that's sort of the science-based and still have this political influence background. TNC is working closely with the CCCI to really help on these nature-based solutions collaboration. And also the current governor, Newsom, also signed an MOU with the Minister of Ecology and the Environment of China, Minister Huang Runqiu, last year, 2022, in April. So this is sort of the political foundation for TNC to work on NBS, because NBS was also highlighted in this MOU. And back to your question, Man, about how to make it work. So again, we do have these kind of 3 main areas that we are focusing on. So one is to really to conduct this comparison study. So nature-based solutions, we also need lots of research to really help TNC, help us to understand not just the carbon benefits by applying an NBS, but also what other multiple benefits, for example, like the biodiversity benefits, the livelihoods benefits, and even this sort of the water benefit to local communities. So we would like to identify one site in China, and now we have an idea in Beijing Mingyun Reservoir watershed, and one site in California. And California has some experience, on these practices as well. So we would like to really document the cost, the benefits, and the trade-offs, and who will pay for this type of these on-the-ground practices. So that's sort of very on-the-ground practice comparison. And sort of elevate a little bit, as Le just mentioned about this carbon market, and California also has their kind of cap and trade carbon market system. And China also is constructing this carbon market. And so we try to facilitate the knowledge exchange and sharing of the lessons learned from California's existing forest carbon market. And also, I know California is sort of in the process to develop this wetland restoration protocol, offset protocol. So what lessons learned from California? What their lessons could be very valuable when China is developing China's carbon market? So that's the second level, sort of like the carbon market, the learning and the information sharing. And the third level is the kind of the policy dialogues. So how the state, a subnational level government could play a role. So both Beijing and the California government made a commitment to achieve carbon neutrality before the national and the federal levels commitment 10 years before. I think Beijing committed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and California committed to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. So these two subnational level government made this commitment, and they could be the pioneers to really think how to apply these nature-based solutions and be the demonstrate and the champions in this jurisdictional level, and be the model for other provinces in China, and also be model for other states. So currently, that's sort of the specific work that TNC is facilitating by collaborating with the CCCI and a few other partners in China. And Le is also kind of on top of this and try to help our collaboration with Chinese partners and collaborators. I will go back to extend Le back to you if you would like to share your insights.
Thank you. I think basically, commissions about, all the things that happens. Maybe something I just want to add is, for the nature-based solutions, and this is what, TNC really focus on, even for the, in China, at least for the past 20 years, all our work would focus on NBS. So something that we really do is in the year 2017, in the TNC global teams, our global science teams, they just, evaluate the potential of the NBS, to tackling climate change. We want to highlight the importance of NBS. First, we need to let people know the potential, the mitigation potential of NBS. So we did this calculation at the global level, and our result shows, nature can help us to contribute 1/3 of the emission we need to achieve the Paris Agreement. So that is kind of, a very an important thing for, organizations like TNC. We work on nature. And based on that result, in China, we also evaluate the mitigation potential of NBS in national level, within China. And we did it at a very, very detailed scale. So that view gives the central government or the provincial government a very good sense evidence is why we want to do things within nature. And that is the science and the model we learn from the global team. So I think that is kind of something, within TNC, how we do this collaboration, because I think, without the TNC, Ke has mentioned the loss of this government cooperation and also, with the universities. But I think within TNC, from China team and the global team, we also have this, very good of cooperation, and also like the carbon market Kerr has mentioned. And for China, we have closed our the national carbon market, but it will be reopened, and we work with the the National Climate Institute in China, and doing the incentive mechanisms for the reopened CCER market. And we also have a very good connection and discussion with the California teams to learn from the California carbon market, because we think, California carbon market runs very well, and there are lots of good experience we could learn from each other. And some of this experience, that might be localized in China and used in the China market. So I think this was kind of the ways, TNC as an international non-governmental organization, we have office in China, and we have this international view, so we could help the teams in China to do more work with international view. So yeah, something I just want to add this. Man, back to you.
Thank you, Ke and Le. So another good example of how to make global work, I guess. So we only have about, I would say, 10 minutes. So I'll ask one more question, and then we'll go to audience question. I saw there's one question in the chat box, but actually, my question is kind of related to the question in the chat box as well. So, we mentioned several times about financing, who's going to pay for it, who's going to pay for the climate change. And then, so, and I understand that some innovative financing, because Ke mentioned the term innovative financing, is being used in the U.S. and some other countries to support changes, particularly in the private sector. So how is China financing its climate actions? Has China adapted or will adapt some of the more innovative financing schemes popping around the world? If so, mainly in what fields or what areas? So who would like to address this first?
I think I can just say very briefly about TNC's global experience. So we are exploring the innovative financing kind of solutions. And man, you are very right. So just so funding conservation and climate change is difficult, especially for those underdeveloped countries or developing countries, even vulnerable countries, especially under this COVID pandemic economic downturn. We definitely need new funding or even navigate the existing funding. So TNC is working on several areas and exploring new ideas, and hopefully, if they are successful, try to replicate those successful models to other places. So one is this debt for nature swaps. I think some of you may have already heard about this. It's basically these creditors provide debt relief in return for government commitments. Say we sort of committed to decarbonize the economy and invest in the climate resilient infrastructure or protect the biodiversity or the forest, reefs and ocean. So TNC has done several deals with different countries, government like Seychelles and Belize and Barbados. So I definitely can share with you some information, the details about the debt for nature swaps. And we are also exploring the potential from China, because China right now is the largest creditor country for many debtor countries in Africa, Southeast Asia. The other thing is this we just very recently had this coral reef insurance policy. So in Hawaii last year in November, just 2 months ago, in November 2022, TNC purchased a coral reef insurance policy for Hawaii. So that will provide funding to repair reefs damaged by hurricanes or tropical storms. So that's a new interesting idea, sort of how to restore this nature and to protect it, especially the communities that next to this ocean, and they are facing the potential risk and damage from this kind of climate change. And another idea is the water funds. And so basically the idea is the water users in the city that were asked to pay for conservation of the upstream forest, the wetland, farmland, and that regulate and filter the local water supply, in terms of quality, water quality and quantity. So basically, so the users pay the upstream land management. And another thing is kind of interesting for us, and we are also learning that called the project finance for permanent project. And as I mentioned, many countries made this a 30 by 30 commitment. So project finance for permanent project is an approach to design, to secure policies, capacity, institutional arrangement, and basically have the full funding for the effective and long-lasting protection of our planet, and also the government, especially for the government who made this 30 by 30 commitment. And some of these ideas have been applied in China, and like the water funds, like this, we are exploring that for nature. But I would like to learn from Le as well, if you would like to share more.
Yeah, because I see the time is kind of limited. I'll just added one example in China. Like for financing NCF is also a very important, work pillar in TNC China. And one thing we did is about the blue carbon projects. So we all know, the blue carbon is a very a hot topic in China right now. And what we could do is about like the mangrove system, the seagrass system, or the salt rush. They are located at the coastal line and protecting the cities located in that area. So if they could work together with the insurance company, if they could kind of donate some money to do the mangrove afforestation or the mangrove restoration, that will help us to reduce the disaster or the risk of the once the storm or the typhoon is coming, that could reduce the damage for the coastal line city, and they won't need to pay that much money after the disaster. So that was kind of something, the concept, or you can see the logic. We're trying to work together with the, the private companies and the local government and also the communities, because I think, for blue carbon, the resilience credits in that blue carbon projects was more related to people. That was, kind of let people know what is climate change, what they can do to climate change. So I think that was also something it's very important. Yeah, just added this. Back to you, Man.
Thank you both. So it gives us like a broader framework and also some examples. So we'll go to questions in the chat box. So Nor, would you like to look at the questions to see what we have there?
Sure. Well, Norm Page has got the first question up here. And his question is, in recent years, many businesses around the world have incorporated ESG, which is environmental social governance, into their management strategies. So he's curious whether TNC has a view towards ESG in both China and the US, and does it offer any opportunities for cooperation between China and US, or maybe with the financial markets? So what's TNC's view on ESG?
Maybe I can just say a few words. So TNC does care about this ESG, and especially with this corporate collaboration. We do have a sort of pretty big team on corporate engagement. And so definitely this is, we have, not only in China formulated this corporate engagement team. That was a few years ago. So there is a team working on that with the corporations in China, and also some international corporations. For example, like Starbucks, they have their business in China. And I know they have been working with these corporations quite closely, and also influence their practices, and try to think about, so when they run their business, how to not just about the environment, social aspects, but also even definitely climate is a part of that discussion as well. And one thing I would like to add, sort of related to this, about China-California collaboration, or even China-US collaboration, there are quite a few companies in Silicon Valley, and they made this carbon neutrality commitment as well, including Google, Apple. And in China, I know Tencent, also kind of Tencent, also made this type of commitment. And this, again, the knowledge cross-pollination collaboration can be very helpful because we don't have much time to waste or to wait. We sort of need to accelerate this process. So the knowledge exchange and the practice exchange absolutely can be a very effective way to sort of how to incorporate this, how to practice this, how these corporations make these policies in their business. Definitely TNC has been working on that. But yeah, I would like to kind of hand it over to Le, see if Le would like to add anything.
Yeah, actually, I definitely totally agree with Ke. I think, for TNC, we do cares a lot about the ESG, and also within China. I think, like Ke has mentioned, we have our corporation engagement department for that BU, and colleagues in that department, they work very close together with the entrepreneurs in China. And I think both for the role of TNC, we kind of providing the technical support, doing this stance support for these companies, how they could do their ESG and where they could, put their efforts and their time and monies on. So I think that was kind of the way, how TNC could help them, to do this ESG. Yeah, one thing to add.
Thanks.
Okay, Mon, I know particularly Ke has another appointment in about 1 minute from now, so I think it's time to wrap up. I know Carl Weavers would like to make a comment, but Carl, I apologize. As far as I know, we're down to our last 30 seconds. So, Mon, do you have any final comments to close off? As the managing director of WCRC, I thank very much our TNC guests for sharing their information and coming on, particularly telling us about COP27 and COP15, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone who's been there actually describe what it was like. So that was great fun. Mon, over to you.
All right, thanks, Nor. And also just to thank again for Ke and Le to join us and then give us your insights and stories. And also we've learned a lot from you guys about TNC's work. And then fighting climate change is definitely a partnership between public sector, private sector, nonprofit, and then everyone of us. And also thank you everyone for participating in our event today. And we will look forward to seeing you at our other events in the future. So have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks.